Welcome to Courageous Dialogues, podcast where I try and get to the heart of the matter with people in your community. Thank you for coming on to Courageous Dialogues.
Oh, thank you for having me.
How are you today?
I'm feeling great. Thank you. How are you, Tanya?
Yes, very good. I'm wondering if you could just introduce yourself for the audience.
Yes, absolutely. My name is Ortho Green. I'm the co-founder of Glittering Minds. And Glittering Minds empowers teachers and educators to help children develop their thinking capabilities and become excellent problem solvers and innovators. I've been working with schools for a few years now. I've created a program that helps schools adopt design thinking as the new framework, the new methodology they use at schools. And the impact is just amazing on teachers and students alike.
Now, I was interviewing with Lisa a few weeks back, and she actually put me onto you and she introduced me to your book that you've written. Have you got that there that you can just hold up for a sec?
Yes, absolutely. It's called Think Unique, your comprehensive guide to cultivating tomorrow's innovators through project-based learning. And I've written it actually during 2020 when we were in lockdown.
Oh, okay. So it's recent. Yes.
Yeah, it's recent because, for years I've been going on my journey on empowering educators to help their student develop these beautiful thinking capabilities. And on 2020, when we went first into lockdown, we weren't sure how long it's going to take. But then when it got longer and longer, I was thinking how I can still deliver on my vision and support teachers while schools are not operating as normal. And this is when I thought, okay, I'll write a book. I'll empower them through a book. So Think Unique is a guide for teachers that takes them on their own creative thinking journey. It starts by exploring what creative thinking is, because there's quite a few misconceptions about creative thinking. And then what happens to our creativity as we go through our education system, and how teachers can create an environment within their classroom to help the student develop their innovative thinking and problem-solving skills. So it has everything teachers need to go and facilitate projects within their classroom that will help the student develop their creative thinking, critical thinking, collaboration, empathy, all these wonderful skills.
So now you have an interesting background. I'm going to get back to that, but can you tell us what is creative thinking?
Yes, absolutely. So creative thinking is our ability to come up with new ideas usually to solve problem or create a preferable future. And I just want to touch on the difference between imagination and creativity, because, we can imagine a lot of things. And luckily for us humans, we have a wild imagination. But the difference is with creativity that we need to actually create and bring to life our ideas. So it's not enough to imagine in our minds new ways of doing things. A big part of creativity is to bring it to life and to create a solution. So when we think creatively, we might find new ways to use an existing product. That's just as an example that is creative, or merge and combine different things to create something new, or come up with a new idea altogether, something that wasn't there before.
Yeah. Okay. So let me touch on your background, because you're not actually a teacher. And so tell us where you started off in terms of your career path and how you ended up actually writing a book, because there is a story behind there.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like the universe has led me to this way. I definitely didn't start within the education space. So I studied computer science and worked for high-tech companies for many years, from big ones such as IBM. I worked for the research lab in Tel Aviv, creating algorithms and future technology, which was amazing. And I also worked for different startup companies, that creating products that disrupt the market. And I loved it. I love the whole process of creating something new and being part of that future, creating the future. That was really wonderful. And then at some point, I became a mom. I have 3 boys. And as you probably very well aware, becoming a parent changed you in a very profound way. And so my focus has changed, and the way I view the world has changed. And when my boys started school, I was very curious to see what's happening in schools these days. How is the classroom different than what I remember as a child? And so I spent quite a lot of time in the classroom. I volunteered wherever I could, whenever I could. And this is when I noticed that even though the classroom looks a bit different, because when I was a child, there was a blackboard and the classroom was quite bare. And now there is whiteboard and monitors and laptops and lots of gadgets. But still the foundation stays the same in terms of the way we go about educating our children. So while the world has moved so quickly forward, it feels like we're running ahead with the advancement in technology and the changes to the job market. It seems to me like the school system in a way stayed behind and hasn't moved with the rest of the world. And so I thought to myself, wow, there is a gap here and I want to do something about it. And I think I know how I can bridge this gap. And this is where design thinking comes into play, which I don't know how many people are familiar with design thinking. So I'll explain a bit about it. Design thinking is a combination of mindset, methodology, tools, and approach to problem solving that enable you to come up with innovative solutions to problems. And it's broadly used within the corporate space. And so I thought I'll teach children design thinking, and by teaching them design thinking, they'll develop their creative thinking, critical thinking, problem solving skill, collaboration, empathy, all of these skills that we now call them the 21st century skills, that we know that children need them in order to succeed in whatever job they might do in the future. And this is how I got to education. And I started with running workshops in school holiday programs for primary age children. And they just loved it. They loved the whole process, the invitation to be creative in their thinking and come up with even crazy ideas and then create a product based on their idea and share it with others. And from there, it grew to a school program. And this is how I got to write this book, Think Unique.
So you touched on, you said just then, the invitation. Do you think it's a matter of everyone has it in them, but we need to be invited into like the critical thinking space? So we need to have some sort of a process, tools, strategies to guide us in that. And unless we're invited and guided and scaffolded approaches, do you think that has a lot to do with in terms of the output of being creative?
There's interest. Well, creative thinking is an interesting thing because we are born super creative. We are born geniuses in creativity. And this has came out of research done for NASA by Dr. George Lang, because NASA wanted to have a test to test their engineers' creativity level. As you know, I mean, think about NASA and Houston and problem in space. They must have on the control room people who are very creative and can think really quickly on their feet and come up with innovative solution because it's life and death situation. And so NASA requested Dr. George Lang develop a test to test creativity. And he did that, but he stayed with a lot of questions after he created that test for NASA's engineer, because then he started to wonder, where does creativity come from? And do we develop it as we grow up? What happens to that? And so he decided to test 5-year-old children, given them that test that he developed. And all of the 5-year-olds scored as creative geniuses. And then he was even more curious because he said, oh my God, all of the children are super creative, but not all adults are creative. So what's going on to our creative thinking as we're growing up? And he decided to turn it into a long research, and he tested the same group of children again when they reached the age of 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And to his surprise, when he tested them, only 40% of them scored as creative geniuses. So there was quite a decline in their creative thinking capabilities. And so he decided, as a proper researcher, to continue the research and test them again at the age of 15. And again, he saw that their creativity is dropping and they're losing their creativity. And at the end, he tested about over 1 million of 30 years old adults, and only 2% of them scored as creative geniuses. So his conclusion after doing this long research was that we are born super creative as humans. Luckily for us, we have wild imagination, but something happens as we enter the education system. And as you probably know, the education system is very answer driven and not question driven. So we teach our children to provide answers, and often to provide the one answer. And so instead of helping them and keep developing their creative thinking, they unlearn to be creative at school because of the system requirement and the way it's designed, which is all about providing specific answers to questions.
Mm. What would you say to someone that says, I'm not creative?
I would say everyone can develop their creativity and become super creative. So even people who think they are not creative, they can do different exercises. They can develop this skill and become creative geniuses again. And this is one of the things as well that came out of this long research, that even though most of us losing our creative thinking as we go through our education system, there are ways for us to develop this skill and be super creative again. And in my book, I actually provide these activities that anyone can do at any age. Even if you're 80 years old, you can still develop your creative thinking and become super creative. It's just a matter of, knowing how to do it and having fun with the process.
Okay, so can you tell me, how did you get into your field? Like, did you know at a young age what you wanted to do? And
you know what the funny thing is? When I was a young girl, I loved reading books. I just love books. I love how they take you to different places, and you learn so much from reading books. So I used to read so many books as a child, and I always dreamt about being an author, to be honest. But I never thought I'll become one. And just when I finished writing my book, I remembered this dream. It suddenly came back to me, because I forgot, as I grew up and went to uni and all of that and started my career, I forgot that I wanted to be an author. And it's funny that when I finished this book, I remembered that this was actually a childhood dream of mine. But there wasn't anything that I really thought, oh, I'm going to be this one as a child, and this is going to be my profession. It just that computer science really was interesting for me, because it has a lot of things that I love to do, like problem solving and creating new things and thinking deeply. And this is what led me to this profession.
So computer science, what I want to say is, when did you get engaged with it? Like, was it primary school, secondary, or was it when you went to university to do some sort of a course and then it was an elective and then you thought, yes, computer science? Did your parents, did they provide you with a computer at a very young age? How did you get to computer science?
Well, I'm going to expose my age, because when I was a child, there wasn't really computers. I mean, it's not like we had a computer at home. And only at a much older age, the internet showed up, right? When I was
Don't
in
say
my
it.
20s. Okay. And that was fascinating, right? I mean, when I know young people today, they can't understand it, but when the internet just started, it was like, wow, this is amazing. And we couldn't even imagine back then where that's going to lead, right? I mean, we couldn't have thought that this is going to be the world we're living in today.
Mhm.
But I was fascinated by it and the possibilities and the options that are opening up with this technology. And so I was curious to learn more, and this is how I got to university and studying computer science.
Okay. So being someone that is good with algorithms, the internet, uh, what are you curious about when you look at the internet? Beside, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we live in an amazing era where we can learn so much through the internet. Every time I'm still amazed by how much I can learn from the internet. It's just there at my fingertips. And I love exploring new things, just typing different things, just seeing what's coming up, because usually when we go on our own path, we do the same things that we are familiar with, we read the things that we familiar with, and we miss out on so much stuff that we never heard of before. And with the internet, it's relatively easy to come across new things, that you never heard of before. It's just that you need to be kind of adventurous in your approach and in how you search. And then a whole new world is there in front of you, and you can learn so much from it.
I'm always curious to why things come up when I'm talking about it.
Oh, yeah, they're listening. They're always listening to you, Tanya.
Very good. So, being adventurous, tell us a time where you were courageous.
Oh, okay. So, as I mentioned, I started my career as a computer scientist, and I worked in IT. And as people can probably imagine, I earned a lot of money. I had a six-figure salary, very comfortable career, lots of perks, very, very easy. And I could easily just continuing climbing that ladder. But then my passion was driving me into the education space and into helping teachers and children, and helping drive a change within our education system so our children can develop the skill that they need to succeed. And so I decided that this is what I'm doing. And I just left my career behind, just resigned without knowing what's going to happen. Can I even earn money from it? How is this journey going to look like? I never had a business before. I just took this decision and went for it.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do, because I know you podcast. What else is it that you do for the education system?
Yeah, so my organization Glittering Minds has a program for schools, a professional development program for teachers, to take them on their design thinking journey, and to learn themselves what is design thinking, and then how they can implement that in the classroom, how they can take this framework and adopt it in order to create a much richer and authentic learning experience in the classroom. So this is one big thing that we do, empowering teachers basically to teach differently, teach in a very innovative manner. I've also written a book for parents, actually. When my book came out for educators, parents started to say, hey, what about us? Can you write a book for us? So I've written a book for parents as well. And I'm getting requests from different parents, because I don't know if you're aware of not, but home education is a trend that is growing, especially since COVID hit us. More and more parents have decided to home educate their children. And so they're looking for support on their journey, and they kind of asking me, can you support us? So I'm looking into that space as well, how I can empower parents as well to create a wonderful learning environment in their homes.
So really, essentially, this all got started because you started volunteering in the classroom.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
what are the benefits for people that don't volunteer? What are the benefits of volunteering, say, in a classroom?
I think it's an amazing experience. And I think, I mean, any parent that can should do that. Because firstly, it brings you much closer to school to understand what your child is experiencing at school. They spend so many hours there. And as a parent, surely you're curious and want to know what's going on there. And also you learn to you get to know the teachers on a much deeper level and what's going on in their day-to-day life, and also how you can further support your child at home because you're more aware of the work that they do at school and how they go about things, and so you can better help them at home later on. I think it's also bring the parents closer to the school, and having a close community, having that community between them in the school, the families and the students, having the three of them kind of together, it means that we can actually provide our children with better education and better learning experiences. I think if we all work in well together, then our children benefit from it greatly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got three boys. I have to ask, did you trial any of your strategies on your boys growing up?
Absolutely. To the degree that sometimes they tell it, oh, we don't want to hear about design thinking anymore.
Yeah. And so in terms of your thinking between boys and girls, are there different strategies that you need to use between the boys and girls, or does the process allow for both genders to be engaged with the
Oh,
design thinking?
definitely. Yeah, the process is the same. I know that sometimes there are differences between different genders and you need to approach them a bit differently. But with design thinking, it's actually it's such a collaborative process and they work so well together. I actually love seeing them working together, boys and girls in groups on solving problems using this methodology, because it helps them, learn how to communicate with each other so much better and how to negotiate difference of opinions and how to work well as a team. So it's just fantastic for both gender and to bring them together, because sometimes you see that at school where boys stick with boys and girls stick with girls and they don't mix up. And with design thinking, because they're always changing who they work with, then they learn to work really well with different gender, with the other gender and the same gender and basically with everyone.
Okay, so this is courageous dialogues. I'm going to throw you a curly one. You are not a teacher. So when you're working with teachers, I'm sure you've had a case of, are you a teacher? And, your response would be no, but I've got this experience. Have you been in situations where you've been challenged because you're not a teacher? Because this is about living systems and how we're all connected. And I'm a big believer that you should always bring the experts into the school. So people like yourself, and you might not be a teacher, but your pedagogy would, be at a high level because of where you've been. So have you ever been in a situation where you've been challenged because you're not a qualified teacher?
No one ever told it to me to my face. Maybe they've thought about it. It might have been, but they haven't expressed it. But I can tell you about a scenario where I was really speechless, and it kind of took me by surprise because I once spoke with a principal assistant about the need for change in education, and I explained my why, and how the world is changing with technology um, and AI and all this, and how the job market is changing. And we don't know, for children who start primary schools today, who knows what jobs are going to be there for them in 15 years time. I mean, who could have imagined that an e-sport coach is going to be a profession, or an Uber driver 10 years back, right? We couldn't have imagined it. So we don't know what the future holds, but we do know what skills they need to be successful. And so I'm giving this whole kind of speech to these principal assistants about the need to change and why, and explaining my whole vision and sharing my experience and what I see on the ground of the impact of design thinking on students and teachers. And then she looks at me and she says, without blinking, she's saying to me, we are a very well-oiled machine. We don't need to change. And I'm standing there stunned. This is an educator that's been working within the education system for so many years and has a perception that school and education don't need to change. I mean, for me, it's the other way around, right? I mean, the education system always needs to find ways to improve, get better, change with the times and the needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just speechless. And this sentence just kept playing in my head like a broken record for a couple of days. I couldn't get it out.
So thank you for the work that you do in education. And it's great to see, people that have gone on to do one thing and then through volunteering have, in essentially supporting the education system. So the work that you do is actually quite important, especially because I'm a big believer with design thinking and project-based learning as a way to engage students. And you're absolutely right. It's about the questions now. It's not about even the content, because that's everywhere. Thank you for coming on to Courageous Dialogues. Any last words for the people out there?
Yeah, I just want to say to all of the amazing teachers that you have more autonomy than you think. You have more power than you might believe, and you can decide on how you facilitate your curriculum. I mean, I know that system imposes a lot of constraint on teachers, but still, even with all of these constraints, you can decide how you facilitate the learning within your classroom, and you can choose to go with an innovative framework to provide your students with the innovative learning environment they need.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.